Good morning, wrestling world. You are being joined by myself, Linda Kay, and the gentleman squire, Matthew Thomas, this Wednesday morning, August 24th. Matthew, how are you doing this
I'm doing
tremendous
fantastic.
morning?
I'm doing fantastic, and I hope the rest of the wrestling world is doing fantastic as well too. Linda, how are you?
Doing great. I'm taking the reins, no pun intended, on PWR Today this morning. It's exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's like anytime you get into a different seat, you kind of have to adjust it a little bit, like change your mirrors around, and
Yeah.
just get comfortable. Ignore the presets on the radio. Just put the radio on whatever you want to. If you want to, FM station. If you want to switch over to the AM dial, you can do that too. Listen to some good, good AM varieties as well.
Yeah, and speaking of being comfortable, I know something that can make you comfortable any time of day. What would that be, Matthew?
Absolutely. That is a collar and elbow brand clothing. It's great for your drive. And I mean, if you're doing a commute, you probably want to keep a couple of extra pairs of or extra changes of collar and elbow in your car just in case. You never know if you're going to need some extra clothes or not. So and you're wondering, how do you acquire this collar and elbow clothing that you guys are talking about all the time? Well, if you want to do that, you peruse. You don't have to go in your car. You don't have to drive there. You can actually just go use your internet, however you access the internet. If it's your phone, if it's a computer, if you go to a local library, if you go to an internet cafe, whatever type of terminal you use to access the World Wide Web, you go and you take that browser, whether it be Internet Explorer, Netscape, or whatever you're using, head on over to www.collarandelbowbrand.com. And once you get there, you put everything in your cart. It's a virtual cart. And if you would like to save some money, you enter promo code Linda K, and that's spelled LINDAKAY, saves you 10% off of your total. And you can be all dressed to the nine, like all of us folk that wear the Collar and Elbow brand clothing.
Wow, Netscape, huh? I haven't been on that internet browser for a while. Now we got Safari, Chrome. But you know what else you can find on your internet browser that also makes comfortable clothing that I happen to be wearing at the Flair show this past weekend? That'd be ProWrestlingInsurance.com. Another
Oh my
friend to the
goodness!
show. Yes.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna have to get a bigger closet.
Well, first, it's about learning about this additional supplemental coverage, not just for pro wrestlers and talent and staff, but really for anybody with coverage as low as $8 a month. So, to our friends at ProWrestlingInsurance.com, make sure to check them out on socials as well as that website. And you too could be sporting. I have a ProWrestlingInsurance.com cropped tank top. I have a t-shirt. I have a hoodie. More info there, ProWrestlingInsurance.com. But Matthew, we got to talk about NXT 2.0 because a lot happened last night. But before we get into that, one bit of news I wanted to mention, just because there is so much going on as far as talents being brought back, shakeups, if you will, and I am talking about the WWE draft. Now, I don't believe there was an actual confirmed date, but there was rumor that the next draft would take place shortly after Clash at the Castle. But latest update is that it's now being postponed, most likely after WrestleMania. Again, this is just rumored innuendo. However, what kind of shakeups would we get with this current state of WWE with their talent turning? And I mean, in every show we're getting this. So, I mean, do you think a draft would be needed right now?
Here's where I'm leaning. And, basically the news is that it has been postponed with the change up at the top. And I don't know, this is absolute pure speculation based on everything that I've seen in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks since Triple H took over, based on what we're kind of seeing from show to show, that I think will segue very nicely into a segment that we saw last night on NXT 2.0. Triple H doesn't strike me as a brand guy. I would not be surprised, and it's just a hunch. It's not based on anything, but the type of storytelling that we're getting week to week, it would not surprise me in the very least if the brand split ends in the relatively near future. Because you stop and think about it, I feel like we've been conditioned for that this past year. I mean, Reigns is the undisputed champion. The Usos are the undisputed tag team champions. I mean, we have gone away from just feeling like you have to have a title on each show. My goodness. I mean, that has been the game. That has been the way
game,
that, yeah,
the way.
that's just, oh my goodness. These are just, you know what, they have embedded their programming so deep into my mind that I'm not picking up on those puns. But yeah, it would not surprise me in the least, because you stop and think about it, Linda. Let's say Drew beats Roman at Clash at the Castle. Like, how are you going to pry that other title off of him? What are you eventually going to do? And I mean, the same thing with the Usos and, you know, whoever takes them on. I just think with the unification of titles, and, you know, that's going to segue again onto what we're seeing in NXT 2.0. I just feel like we're headed to a spot where that brand split might not be needed, because I feel like we've gotten so many surprises. And that has been a big ingredient in the recipe that we currently have right now. Ah, my goodness. I would not be shocked if the brand split goes away completely.
Yeah, we'll see if that does happen. I mean, how long, how soon would that be? Well, if there's any type of hint of how soon unifications can happen at NXT, we sure got a big preview of that last night when we got another invasion of some of the UK champions, some of the NXT UK stars. The show kicked off. We have our NXT champion Braun Breaker coming out, and we ended up having a face-off with him and the NXT UK champion Tyler Bate. Now, last week we did see Tyler Bate make an appearance at Heatwave. It was called Heatwave, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It was
Think of the
indeed.
song Heatwave. Well, we now have this face to face, and the announcement or Tyler Bate mentioning UK. I'm sorry, NXT Europe happening sometime soon, and now NXT Worlds Collide taking place a week from Sunday. That would be Labor Day Sunday, the same night as another pay-per-view, by the way. However, NXT Worlds Collide will take place Sunday, September 4th. And looks like, I mean, now we know it's confirmed. At the time, they were having their face-off. But we will have an NXT Championship unification match take place where we got the NXT UK title and the NXT America title, just put together
Just
as
the
unification.
just the NXT title. Yeah, this is, I mean, we've gotten cross promotional contests before, but I don't know that we've gotten a unification, which just, here's my read on it. One of two things, and they can possibly be both. I wonder if they're running out of viable contenders to feed Breaker. And number two, NXT 2.0, this incarnation, it doesn't feel like it was meant to be the wrestling fans wrestling show like Black and Gold, like NXT UK kind of acclimates itself to be. So I wonder if this is a little bit of a reset on that NXT brand to make it the show, or at the very least to get it back in that lane that caters a little bit more toward your independent wrestling fan. That's what this feels like to me.
Absolutely. And we got some more UK talents who also, again, made an appearance last week at Heatwave. But we have Gallus, the faction Gallus from Glasgow, Scotland, having an NXT UK title match against the current NXT UK champions, Briggs and Jensen. Now, this was a great match between the two of them. It's another introduction of Gallus. Sorry, I'm going to segue for a minute. This is kind of really making me feel like reminiscent to when we had the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. We're getting
right.
I was just thinking Aussie Open just because it was a 3-man faction there. I digress. But great match between the two of them. But then we had some shenanigans take place outside of the ring during the match when Lash Legend came out, attacked Fallon Henley, and then we had Pretty Deadly. Now that Lash Legend and Pretty Deadly are allies, we had them coming in and Briggs and Jensen just exiting their own match. That, hey, it's a count out. While Gallus may have won by disqualification, obviously the tag titles don't change hands. But then we have Diamond Mine coming out, getting an attack in on Gallus as well.
Yeah, a lot going on here. I continue to be intrigued by the team of Lash Legend and Pretty Deadly. That was not a tandem that I expected to really team up, but yeah, it was a it really highlighted a lot of that tag division with some NXT UK talents mixed in, and on the subject of Diamond Mine, with what we saw Monday night, with what we're seeing with call-ups, I can't help but feel like we might not be seeing Roderick Strong in NXT that much longer. I might be wrong, but I feel like he may be on his way out as well.
Yeah, I mean, just that teasing of a turn possibly in Diamond Mine. You think just when you think it's going to happen, it doesn't. And then now it's seeming that Diamond Mine's being more upfront with him. Not saying they're necessarily turning on him, but it was mentioned later in the episode that they don't trust him anymore. So interesting point there, Matthew. We come back from the break and we get a segment from Chase U. Chase U's always a fun one. We love seeing these Chase U segments. We had an introduction. We had a special guest in one of their camps there, and it was a British star as well, Charlie Dempsey, who was well versed in the British catch as catch can. We had a little segment there with him and Brody, and just another type of style inserted. I know we've seen some strong style. We've seen a little catch as catch can on NXT 2.0 before, but perhaps this is another talent from across the pond that will be utilized a lot into NXT as well. But coming up next, a new talk show that debuted last night, and that would be the Grayson Waller effect. So I will say I enjoyed having this talk show on there. There were some unique segments. We haven't seen like an Instagram live. I don't know for sure if he was actually Instagram living during it, but I do believe that was possibly true. But his special guest was Apollo Crews. Now, we have seen some back and forth between the two of them the past couple of weeks, and it's great to have them in this segment because while it was this talk show segment, I was really feeling this. I felt there was some real heat there between the two of them. I mean, hey, we had Grayson Waller mentioning the accent. I know it hasn't really been brought up on WWE programming, but they shot some fire back and forth on one another, and boom, Apollo Crews decks Grayson Waller to the pleasure of those many of those in attendance there, and looks like we got a match between the two of them next week.
And I think this is a really great fit for Grayson Waller to have his own talk show. I mean, he is one of the highlights of the NXT crew on the mic, and we see that in promos, we see that in backstage segments, but I mean, it's very reminiscent of a Miz-like character, which there may be a market for a new talk show now that the Miz's whereabouts are unknown. So I think this is a very, very good lane for Grayson Waller.
As Apollo Crews did call him a low-rate Miz or something along those lines. And I didn't think about that until he said it. So we also had a match featuring one of our favorites, Cameron Grimes, against somebody that's been on NXT Level Up, but it's Javier Bernal, known as Big Body Javi, facing Cameron Grimes. Now, Cameron Grimes getting this win. However, something interesting with this match was having the schism, that
yes.
was Dyad and Joe Gacy watching from above. They're still scouting hard on Cameron Grimes.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued to where this goes. We've broken it down very in depth on this show. Like, it's hard to imagine Grimes a follower, but like, what does the dynamic look like as Gacy and company are around the orbit of Grimes? I mean, this is really two of my favorite NXT 2.0 characters, in one spot. And I'm curious as to where it goes, mainly because, Grimes, this was not, if this was Gacy trying to court Grimes from a year ago, I think it would be entertaining, but it wouldn't have that much depth. But now this is a Grimes that is kind of conflicted. So I'm curious as to what this ultimately looks like.
Right. We'll see later on a little bit more in action between all of them there. But up next, we have the debut of another NXT UK star, Blair Davenport. Now, she faced Indy Hartwell, who, as the commentators have been saying, Indy Hartwell has had a really rough past couple months. But man, though, Blair Davenport, very physical, very vicious, and almost unremorseful, I think is one of the words I heard. But she ends up defeating Indy Hartwell. But after this, she grabs the mic and she lets all of us know how she is the number one contenders for the UK women's title. Lo and behold, we now have the appearance of our NXT women's champion, Mandy Rose, will face off with Blair Davenport, trying to put her in her place, saying, that she's the most dominant women's champion, and for Blair Davenport to put some respect on her name. Well, it doesn't end there, Matthew. Now we get the appearance from the NXT UK women's champion, Meiko Satomura, who I know of Meiko, but they repeatedly mention how much of a legend she is to the world of wrestling. So honor to have her there at in NXT. But now we get another matchup, and we later find out in the books it is confirmed, but another match for Worlds Collide, not just for the NXT UK title and the NXT title, a unification match, but it's also going to be a triple threat unification match, because now Blair Davenport, who just told us she's number one contender, is also in this match. So another unification match.
Linda, I want to go on a limb and say that I think this is going to be a much more intriguing concept than Forbidden Door. And the main reason is Forbidden Door was basically a drive-by. And people knew that. People knew that the people coming in week to week were to sell the pay-per-view. And, like we talked about on this show, and I'm very interested to see where the man they call Meathead sides on this, because he was one of the most outspoken vocal critics that I ran across of the whole Forbidden Door concept of these people just showing up for a cup of coffee and saying, buy the pay-per-view. I think NXT and NXT UK is going to work more efficiently, because I think it is requiring the viewer's investment. When we're finding out that this is a title unification match, I don't think we're going to have NXT USA run the gauntlet and NXT UK go away never to be seen again. Mm-hmm. I think that we are heading towards a lot more of a merger here, and a lot more of seeing these talents on weekly programming. And I don't think it's just a draw to try to get people over to watch NXT UK. I think we're going to have a lot of these people actually bleed over into the current NXT product, especially as some of this NXT talent goes up to the main roster. So I'm intrigued by this, and I am much more interested and invested in learning a little bit more about these NXT UK talents than I was necessarily the people within New Japan that I was unfamiliar with, because I feel like this is kind of that next step in the NXT product.
Right. I mean, I was wondering, are the NXT UK talents that we're seeing, are they going to be a mainstay here at NXT in Orlando? And I do believe so, but I want to find out more info on NXT Europe, how that's all happening. And now that we're getting some of the European talents here, do some of our guys go to Europe? Yeah. We should see.
Well, not only that, I think that line between call up, and NXT is going to be a lot thinner. I mean, what we've seen in the last few weeks, of course, Lyons was injured, but we were supposed to see Team of Her and Stark go up, and then we had my Toxic Attraction last week, and of course they're out due to injury. But I mean, I think that NXT talent coming up to a show, maybe just for a show or two. I don't think that they're going to be completely separate brands like we'd seen in the past. And I think one of those illustrations is the way that we got Gargano reintroduced to the main roster.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, this guy's up on the main roster and we're going to hit the reset button, and you're going to have to basically learn to appreciate this person from scratch. He was out there on Monday night talking about his accolades, talking about his titles from NXT, which generally it was like these people were starting from scratch when they went up to the main roster. Their accolades in NXT really weren't recognized. So I think there's going to be much more of a cohesive effort to make NXT, it's still its own thing, but make that transfer over to the main roster a little bit more of a seamless process. And that might actually be, talents not officially main roster talents, but we see some NXT talent on the main roster every now and then.
That's a really great point. And speaking of another talent that recently came over from across the pond onto the USA show, JD Mcdonough. Now, it was just a little segment showing him how much he, dare I say, enjoys the pain. We also noticed, I didn't notice at first. I thought it was an interesting look on his face. And then they flipped the camera around. He was doing that promo upside down. Now, I don't believe he is going to have a scheduled match at Worlds Collide, but he did tell Braun Breaker, see you on the other side, which makes me feel he'll still show up at that pay-per-view, live premium event, coming up a week from Sunday. Now, here, the big highlight of the night for me, Matthew, Indy Hartwell was still sitting outside the ring all this time after that match. So she gets on the mic, just talks about, again, how hard these past couple months have been for her and how she's blaming herself for all of that. Then all of a sudden, you hear the NXT universe erupt. You see Dexter Lumis out of nowhere, no pun intended, stand up. Indy turns around. They even crawl and ring in unison together. Oh, a little embrace. What a moment.
This might be my favorite thing that's happened on NXT 2.0 since it rebooted to 2.0. And how over is that guy? My goodness. Like, this is fantastic. I mean, we literally got Dexter Lumis kidnapping The Miz on Raw Monday night. And he shows up at NXT. He's a hero. He's an absolute hero. And this was perfect. And I want to fast forward to the follow-up, the backstage segment between the two. For the second time in as many weeks, Linda, they are having to basically cut the audio on the NXT crowd due to their profane chants. And I think that NXT crowd we noticed last week with Heat Wave, and even though it's a lot of the same people that we've been seeing the whole time, I think they're starting to feel the renewed excitement in WWE in general. But yeah, those foul mouth NXTers, having to go with the little audio delay there.
Right. So it was a brief reunion of Index as the police then took Dexter Lumis off in the handcuffs. But I do hope there's a sign. I was hoping that, while he carried her off, that he would carry her into Raw someday soon, which it could still happen, especially with bringing in the NXT UK talent over to our NXT. Hopefully we'll see them together in Raw soon. I did have to read that love note he gave him, and when I caught in there, it said, "I hurt you forever." Oh dear. Moving on. We have
Linda, I want to throw this out there real quick. I think what I want to see is I think what I want to see is Indy showing up to Raw in an attempt to get the Miz to drop any press charges.
Oh, that could be. That could absolutely be, because right now we have Indy in the ring, saying how everything's just gone wrong for her and blaming herself for everything, to have Dexter show up, and now we're just gonna have her sad and miserable in NXT again. No, we want her on Raw or SmackDown, whatever show Dexter would end up on. I think we think we can have that happen, hopefully. Um, Next, though, we have a tag match with Legado del Fantasma against the Dyad. Now, here's the other interesting twist. We have Cameron Grimes watching atop as well. So everything's kind of coming full circle here. The Dyad having the win. Also giving out hugs, and just so reminiscent of, giving the people what they want, according to another wrestling show there. But yeah, just some more stuff between Cameron Grimes and the schism. I can't say that. Schism.
Schism. I think it's
Yeah.
Schism.
Yeah, I think so too. We then have a match with Von Wagner and Tyler Bate. Tyler Bate getting that victory, some momentum going into his unification match. So speaking of a possible future unification match, we had a backstage segment with Diamond Mine and Briggs and Jensen. Now, I know Diamond Mine does have that 6-man tag next week against Gallus, but they were saying to Briggs and Jensen, hey, once we get through Gallus, it'll be between the two of us. So possibly a future unification match at Worlds Collide. That wasn't even announced. That was just me thinking ahead, because we're going to unify the men's and the women's NXT titles. Possibly the tags one. I mean, that's just looking like where it's going to go. But so main event, a lights out match between Tiffany Stratton and Wendy Chu. Now, they've had a lot going on the past couple weeks, and this is one feud I've been enjoying. And finally getting to see it happen, I thought it was great. I mean, it starts out with Wendy Chu getting out of her onesie. I mean, while she was still wearing pajamas, another attire, just a whole another demeanor. And I think the two of them have great chemistry. I really like their dynamic, and just the highlights for me. Something reminiscent to a street fight we actually had at a GLCW show this summer, Matthew. We had a moment there, and it was actually involving our good pal Cal Hero against his enemy Tony Gunn in that match. It was a street fight where at one point it was not thumbtacks that was pulled out of the sack; it was Legos.
Oh my goodness! I was going to ask you if Legos were involved.
Yeah, so I saw that. I immediately text Cal and Dave. I'm like, "Are you seeing this?" Because that was a huge moment, a big pop at our show, and that's what we got last night as well, with Wendy Chu getting slammed into those Legos, and I'm sure that hurt. I'd rather take Legos than the thumbtacks, and I'm sure the Legos hurt a lot as well. But we later got outside the ring. There was Tiffany's powder that was about to be utilized, but perfect timing on that kick from Wendy Chu, as when while the crowd was chanting "We want tables," they got bed as Tiffany Stratton got slammed. I want to say it was almost a rock bottom into the bed, and then Wendy Chu bringing Tiffany Stratton into the ring with her nap time finisher. 1, 2, 3. The winner of I'm pretty sure it's the first ever lights out match there at NXT.
Yeah, and I think this was a nice contrast to really what we've seen in the feud. I mean, the feud, it's really been kind of a little bit of a light piece each week in NXT. This is a pretty serious match. And it was really good to see, especially this side of Wendy Chu that's not necessarily represented each week. What really struck me was, I think what they were doing with this match, with it being a lights out match, was very similar to what they were doing with the gimmick match we had a few weeks ago. That was kind of like the boxing / wrestling match. It seems like NXT is trying to break out these, not necessarily a crazy stimulation, but the crazy stipulation, but this type of match that visually just looks different. I don't know if it's an effort to grab somebody, flipping the channels, but it did dawn on me, much like we saw a few weeks ago, this just looks different if you're just tuning in, if you're just flipping by, much more of a different visual. But no, I think this was what it also spoke to was the fact that you can have this thing that's kind of in this lighthearted feud, but you can use it to main event. a show. And really, really applaud the fact that even something on a back burner like that, or that hasn't been a main event feud, you can put on make a match mean enough to main event a show like we saw last night.
Absolutely. Now, NXT ends with the official contract signings for those said unification title matches. We have the triple threat women's NXT unification match, and then we also had Braun Breaker and Tyler Bates signing off on their title match. There was no blood though; they were using pens, Matthew.
Yeah,
We did not have JD McDonough in there signing with the blood, but hey, it's become official. This is huge news coming out of NXT.
no, without a doubt, and I'm intrigued by this. And it feels like, again, just spinning around the roster, saying, "Oh, this person seems like the next viable threat for a title match." Introduce some of your audience to a demographic of the NXT or the WWE universe. That, are we still saying WWE universe? Have we heard that much recently since Triple H took over?
I don't think so. Interesting point. um, I failed to mention one major thing because it's funny, we were off air talking about how we were trying to read our own notes. We saw Santos Escobar show up, and he was not driving a Dodge Charger. It was some Chevy SUV. I made sure to look well and hard for that. But he picks up the rest of Legado del Fantasma, and he says, "You didn't think I was going to leave without you, did you?"
Oh,
he says that La Familia stays together. I'm saying it. They're going up to Raw or SmackDown. It has to be, right?
yeah, and I want to see them. Literally drive in that same vehicle.
Yes, and rehash what was never finished with them in Hit Row, possibly.
Yeah. That could be interesting. You saw the interaction with Heat Row and Maximum Male Models. I mean, we don't have belts, but WWE kind of working their way to their very own, faction warfare like we're getting over in AEW.
Absolutely. Well, Matthew, it was a pleasure speaking with you this morning. We always have so much to talk about with NXT, and I'm really enjoying this new spin that we're seeing in NXT. So looking forward to speaking NXT, talking NXT with you next week. But before we go, just want a quick shout out here to OVW. I'm on my way back to Louisville this week. We have our final pay-per-view of the summer. It's called The Big One. I mean, there's been a lot going on this summer. This Saturday night on Fight TV, The Big One for OVW. I will be happy to report how that goes when I speak with Meathead Monday morning. But until then, hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And to everyone listening, we thank you so much. Hope you have, as I like to say, #tremendous week for yourselves. So thank you everyone for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow.